Hello everyone. In today's video, I bring you an absolutely captivating story that will challenge everything you believe about life and death. Let's meet Elijah Halstead, a chief engineer who, in 1983, faced a storm at sea and literally died. But what he saw on the other side will leave you speechless. He returned with shocking revelations about the fate of souls and a truth that will change your worldview. So before we dive into this incredible journey, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel to never miss any content like this, and turn on notifications to receive all updates. Get ready for a trip beyond the limits of reality and discover the secrets Elijah brought back after crossing the threshold of death. My name is Elijah Halstead, and I have a story to tell that completely changed my life and my perception of reality. I am a chief engineer by profession, always a man of science, facts, and numbers. My analytical mind always sought logical explanations for everything around me. However, in 1983, I had an experience that challenged everything I thought I knew about life and death. Before getting into the details of what happened, I want you to understand that I am not one for fantasies or exaggerations. I have always been known for my objectivity and pragmatism. That's why what I'm going to share here is so significant to me. This story is not just about a maritime accident or a near-death experience. It's about a journey that took me beyond the limits of what we consider possible, a journey that continued to shape my life long after the initial event. What I experienced on that stormy night in September 1983 not only challenged my understanding of the world, but also prepared me to face future challenges I didn't even know would exist. This experience taught me about the nature of consciousness, the interconnectedness of all things, and, above all, the power of unconditional love. In the following parts of this narrative, I will share with you the details of the accident that nearly took my life, the incredible journey my consciousness experienced while my body fought to survive, and how this experience continued to impact my life in the years that followed. I will talk about the visions I had, the beings I encountered, and the truths that were revealed to me. I ask that you open your minds to hearing this story with an open heart. I know much of what I will share may seem unbelievable or impossible. I myself would have difficulty believing it if I hadn't experienced it personally. But I can assure you that every word I'm about to share is true, at least as far as my memory and understanding allow me to recount it. This is a journey of transformation, from fear to acceptance, from doubt to certainty, from isolation to connection. It is a story about how I faced death and came back with a new understanding of life. It is about how I learned to see beyond the veil of physical reality and recognize the spiritual nature of our existence. So, if you're ready, let's embark together on this extraordinary journey. A journey that began on a stormy night at sea but extended far beyond, touching the very fabric of reality and consciousness. It was a night in September 1983, a night I will never forget. I was aboard the Aurora, a research vessel where I worked as the chief engineer. We were sailing off the coast of Maine when we were caught in a storm of ferocity I had never experienced before. The sky, which had been clear and starry just hours earlier, was now a dark and menacing mass. The wind howled with a terrifying intensity, and the waves, which normally barely rocked our sturdy research vessel, now seemed like liquid mountains ready to engulf us. As the chief engineer, I was in the engine room, fighting to keep the ship's systems running amid the chaos. The roar of the engines competed with the deafening sound of the storm outside. I could feel the ship being violently shaken, and I knew we were in a critical situation. That's when the captain made the difficult decision to evacuate part of the crew in a smaller boat. The idea was for this group to try to reach the shore, where we believed we would be safer. I was assigned to this evacuation group. Leaving the Aurora was one of the hardest things I've ever done. As we descended down the side of the ship amidst the storm, I couldn't help but think of the colleagues left behind, struggling to keep the ship afloat. The evacuation boat seemed tiny compared to the giant waves surrounding us. We had barely moved away from the Aurora when the real horror began. A monstrous wave, larger than anything I had ever seen, appeared out of nowhere. It was as if the ocean itself had decided to swallow us whole. I remember looking up and seeing a wall of black water rising over us. The impact was brutal. The wave hit our small boat sideways, flipping it instantly. I was thrown out as if I were a rag doll. For a brief moment, I felt the cold night air before being swallowed by the icy darkness of the ocean. The sensation of being submerged in that icy water is something I will never forget. Panic consumed me as I desperately fought to reach the surface. The darkness was total. I couldn't tell which way was up or down. My lungs burned, begging for air. I swam with all my might, but it felt like the more I struggled, the deeper I sank. The pressure of the water increased, and I could feel my consciousness beginning to fade. It was at that moment of absolute despair that something incredible happened. Suddenly, all the struggle ceased. The sensation of suffocation, the panic, the intense cold, it all disappeared in an instant. It was as if I had crossed an invisible barrier, passing from total chaos to absolute calm. And so, without me realizing exactly how, my journey beyond life began. At the moment when I thought all was lost, that my life would end in the depths of the ocean, something extraordinary happened. The struggle ceased, the panic disappeared, and I found myself in a completely different place. The transition was so sudden that at first I could hardly comprehend what was happening. One second I was fighting against the icy waters of the North Atlantic, my lungs burning from the lack of air. The next instant, I found myself enveloped by a soft and welcoming darkness. This darkness was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't the scary, oppressive darkness of the nighttime ocean. It was a living darkness, almost palpable, that seemed to embrace me with an indescribable sense of peace and security. The most surprising thing was the total absence of fear. Just moments before, I had been in absolute panic, but now I felt completely serene. There was no pain, no cold, no struggle. For the first time in my life, I was experiencing a peace that transcended any understanding. In this state, I was conscious, but in a different way. It wasn't the limited awareness of my physical body. It was as if my mind, my essence, had expanded. I could perceive everything around me with incredible clarity, even in the absence of physical sensory stimuli. As I became accustomed to this new state of being, I began to feel a presence around me. It wasn't something I could see or hear in the traditional sense, but it was a feeling of not being alone. It was as if the very environment was responding to my thoughts and emotions. Then I noticed something even more extraordinary. In the distance, I perceived a light. At first, it was just a tiny point, almost imperceptible. But as I focused my attention on it, the light seemed to grow and intensify. This light was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't blinding or uncomfortable to look at. On the contrary, it was soft and welcoming, emanating a sense of love and acceptance that I had never experienced before. I felt irresistibly drawn to this light. It wasn't a physical attraction in the traditional sense. After all, I no longer had a physical body at that moment. It was more like my very essence resonated with the energy of that light, longing to approach it. As I moved toward the light, or perhaps it was the light moving toward me, it was hard to tell. I began to realize that I was not alone on this journey. There were other presences around me, beings of light that seemed to guide and comfort me. It was at this moment that I understood. I had crossed the threshold between life and death. What I was experiencing was not just a hallucination caused by lack of oxygen or the fear of imminent death. It was something much deeper, much more real. I was about to embark on a journey beyond anything I could have imagined. A journey that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and the nature of reality. As I approached the light, I began to distinguish forms within it. They were like fragments of light that stood out and took shape. To my surprise and awe, 3 luminous figures approached me. These figures were difficult to describe in human terms. They didn't have solid bodies like ours, but were composed of pure, vibrant, living light. Their forms were fluid, subtly changing as I observed them. The most impressive thing was the feeling of unconditional love and acceptance that radiated from them. The moment I saw them, I felt a deep and instant connection. It was as if I had known them for a very, very long time. Deep down, I knew that these were my spiritual guides, my soul family. They weren't people I had known in life, but somehow I recognized them on a level much deeper than any earthly relationship. The most surprising thing was how we communicated. There were no spoken words, but I could perfectly understand everything they wanted to convey. It was a form of telepathic communication, instant and complete. Thoughts, emotions, and images were shared immediately and clearly. The first message I received from them was one of welcome and comfort. They assured me that I was safe, that everything was fine. I felt an intense wave of relief and gratitude, so overwhelming that it almost overpowered me. Next, they began to guide me on a journey through my past. It was as if we were watching a movie of my life, but from a completely new perspective. I wasn't just reliving my own moments, but also experiencing the emotions and thoughts of the people I had interacted with. I saw moments of joy and sadness, triumph and failure. But the most surprising thing was that there was no judgment. Even in the moments when I had made mistakes or hurt someone, I didn't feel shame or guilt. There was only understanding and an unconditional love that seemed to permeate everything. The beings of light showed me how every experience, every interaction, every choice I had made had contributed to my growth and learning. I saw how the difficulties I faced had made me stronger and more compassionate. I understood that there were no mistakes in the traditional sense, only opportunities for learning and growth. During this life review, I was also shown the impact my actions had on others. I saw how a simple act of kindness could create waves of positivity that spread far beyond the initial moment. Similarly, I saw how negative actions could cause pain and suffering that extended beyond the immediate target. This experience made me realize the deep interconnectedness of all things. I understood that our lives are intertwined in ways we cannot always perceive on the physical plane. Every action, every word, every thought has an impact on the whole. The beings of light guided me with infinite patience and love through this review. They helped me understand the greater purpose behind every experience, even the most painful ones. I felt immense gratitude for every moment of my life, good or bad, because they had all contributed to making me who I was. As the review of my life came to an end, I felt a sense of completeness and peace that I had never experienced before. It was as if all the pieces of the puzzle of my existence had finally come together, revealing a picture of beauty and meaning beyond my previous understanding. But my journey with the beings of light was far from over. They had much more to show and teach me. After the review of my past, the beings of light guided me to what I can only describe as visions of the future. It was as if we were moving through time and space, observing events that had not yet happened. Some of these visions were incredibly vivid and detailed. I could see faces, places, and events with stunning clarity. Others were more nebulous, as if they were still in the process of forming. I understood that the future was not fixed, but was fluid and subject to change based on our choices and actions. Among these visions of the future, one stood out with impressive clarity. I saw myself facing a cancer diagnosis years later. It was a disturbing vision, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of peace. The beings of light conveyed the understanding that, although this challenge would be difficult, I would have the strength to overcome it. I saw myself undergoing treatment, supported by loved ones, and emerging stronger on the other side. This vision of my future struggle with cancer taught me an important lesson about the nature of time and destiny. I realized that, although certain events may be written in our path, how we face them and what we learn from them is entirely up to us. As I absorbed these visions of the future, a greater and more radiant being of light approached. It was an angelic presence, emanating a peace and wisdom that seemed infinite. This being began to reveal truths to me that transcended my human understanding. The first and most important of these truths was that the journey of souls does not end with physical death. I learned that we are eternal beings, on a continuous journey of growth and evolution. The life we live on Earth is just one chapter of this greater journey. The angelic being showed me that, after physical death, we are welcomed back to our true spiritual home, enveloped in an unconditional love that surpasses anything we can experience on Earth. I saw how our souls reconnect with the divine essence, recharging with pure spiritual energy. Another profound truth that was revealed to me was the interconnectedness of all things. I saw how every thought, every action, every choice we make creates ripples that spread throughout the universe, affecting everything and everyone around us in ways we cannot always perceive. The angelic being showed me the beauty and complexity of the divine plan. I saw how every life, every experience, no matter how difficult or painful it may seem, has a greater purpose. I understood that the challenges we face in earthly life are opportunities for growth and learning for our souls. As I absorbed these cosmic truths, I felt my consciousness expand in a way I had never experienced before. It was as if I could see and feel the vastness of the universe and, at the same time, understand my unique place within it. The angelic being gave me a final message of love and encouragement. I was reminded that, although I was experiencing this expansion of consciousness now, I would not be able to retain all this knowledge when I returned to physical life. However, the essence of these truths would remain with me, guiding me on my earthly journey. As this part of my experience came to an end, I felt immense gratitude for everything that had been shown and taught to me. I knew that no matter what the future held, I would carry with me the certainty of this unconditional love and divine connection. However, my journey was not yet over. The beings of light had a final message for me, one that would change the course of my life in ways I could not yet imagine. After the profound revelations and visions of the future, I felt completely at peace, enveloped in a love and understanding that surpassed anything I had ever experienced. Part of me wanted to remain in that state of bliss forever. However, the angelic being had a final message for me, one that surprised me and, at first, left me reluctant. With kindness, but firmly, the angelic being informed me that my journey on earth was not yet complete. There was a greater purpose for my life, lessons still to be learned, and experiences yet to be lived. It was time to return to my physical body. At first, I felt a strong resistance to this idea. How could I leave this place of perfect peace and unconditional love to return to the pain and uncertainty of earthly life? The thought of going back to my body, which I knew was struggling against the icy waters of the ocean, filled me with apprehension. Sensing my hesitation, the angelic being enveloped me in a wave of understanding and love. I was reminded that earthly life, with all its challenges and difficulties, is a precious gift. Every experience, every interaction, every moment of joy or sorrow is an opportunity for our soul's growth and learning. I then understood that returning was not a punishment, but rather a privilege. It was a chance to apply the lessons I had learned, to live with a new understanding and purpose. I accepted that it was time to return. The moment I made that decision, I felt a shift. The bright light that surrounded me began to fade, and I found myself being pulled back. It was as if I were falling, but without fear. The beings of light and the angelic being bid me farewell, assuring me that although I could no longer see them, they would always be with me. Suddenly, I was back in the ocean. It was a shock to feel the intense cold of the water again, the oppressive darkness surrounding me. My physical body felt heavy and clumsy compared to the lightness I had experienced in the spiritual realm. I fought to reach the surface, my lungs burning from the lack of air. When I finally emerged, gasping and breathless, I saw lights in the distance. They were the spotlights of a rescue boat. Within minutes, strong hands pulled me out of the water. I had survived. Against all odds, I was alive. The next moments were a whirlwind of activity. I was wrapped in blankets, examined by doctors, and bombarded with questions, but I could barely process what was happening around me. My mind was still filled with the visions and experiences I had just had. When I finally found myself alone in a hospital bed, I tried to make sense of everything that had happened. Part of me wanted to believe it had all been a hallucination caused by lack of oxygen. But deep in my heart, I knew the truth. What I had experienced was real. More real than anything I had ever lived before. In the days and weeks that followed, as I recovered physically, I struggled to integrate my near-death experience into my daily life. How could I return to normalcy after glimpsing the secrets of the universe? How could I explain to others what had happened to me? For now, I decided to keep my experience a secret. I knew it would be difficult for others to understand, and I feared being judged or ridiculed. But I also knew that my life would never be the same. I had returned with a new purpose, a new understanding of life and death. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and a mind filled with new truths, I began to take the first steps in my new life. A life that I knew would be deeply shaped by the extraordinary journey I had experienced beyond the boundaries of death. In the months that followed my return, I experienced a profound transformation in how I perceived the world around me. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes, allowing me to see reality in a completely new way. The most immediate and surprising change was the development of the ability to see auras around people. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. Glimpses of soft, vibrant colors surrounding people's bodies. But over time, I realized that these colors were consistent and seemed to reflect the emotional and spiritual state of each individual. Seeing auras was initially a disconcerting experience. I could perceive when someone was happy, sad, anxious, or at peace, even before speaking with them. The colors varied from soft shades of blue and green for calm and centered individuals to vibrant reds for those who were agitated or angry. Along with the auras, I developed a sharp intuition about people. It was as if I could sense their emotions, their intentions, even their unspoken thoughts. This made social interactions both fascinating and challenging. On one hand, I could understand people on a much deeper level. On the other, it was sometimes overwhelming to deal with so much emotional information. My perception of time also changed dramatically. Whereas before I had always been rushing, worried about the future or ruminating over the past, now I found myself deeply present in each moment. Every experience, every interaction seemed imbued with a deeper meaning. Nature, in particular, took on a new dimension of beauty and significance for me. I could feel life pulsating in every tree, every flower, every insect. The interconnectedness of all things, which had been shown to me during my near-death experience, was now something I could perceive directly in the world around me. However, this new perception of reality also brought challenges. At times, I felt overwhelmed by the intensity of my perceptions. It was difficult to filter all the sensory and emotional information that was now available to me. I had to learn to manage these new abilities, to find a balance between being open to these perceptions and not letting them dominate me. Additionally, I struggled with a sense of isolation. How could I explain to others what I was experiencing? How could I share the profound truths I had learned during my journey beyond life? I feared being seen as crazy or delusional if I spoke openly about my experiences. For now, I decided to keep my experience and my new perceptions a secret. Only my wife, Celeste, and my closest friend, Jonathan, knew what had happened to me. Their acceptance and support were crucial during this transition period. At work, I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but it was a constant challenge. Seeing the auras of my colleagues, sensing their emotions and intentions, made it difficult to maintain the professional distance I'd been accustomed to. At the same time, my new perspective allowed me to be a more empathetic and effective leader. As the months turned into years, I learned to integrate my new perceptions into my daily life. I began to see these abilities not as a burden, but as gifts that allowed me to navigate the world with more compassion and understanding. Still, I carried with me the weight of a deep secret. I knew that the truths I had learned during my near-death experience had the potential to transform not only my life, but the lives of many others. Yet I wasn't ready to share my story openly. Little did I know that the universe had plans to challenge me once again, in a way that would force me to confront everything I had learned and find the courage to share my truth with the world. It was the year 2000, almost 17 years after my near-death experience, when I faced the challenge I had glimpsed that fateful night. The diagnosis came as a shock to everyone around me, but for me, it was the fulfillment of a vision I had carried for years. Cancer. When the doctor spoke the words, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was fear, of course. After all, I was facing a potentially fatal illness. but there was also a sense of calm and acceptance that surprised even me. I vividly remembered the vision I had during my near-death experience. I'd seen myself facing this challenge, and more importantly, I had seen myself overcoming it. That memory gave me a strength and confidence that sustained me through the most difficult moments. My wife, Celeste, was my pillar of support throughout the process. She had been by my side since my experience at sea, and though initially skeptical, she had come to accept and even embrace the changes that had occurred in me. Now, facing this new trial, her strength and unconditional love were essential. The treatment was intense and exhausting. Chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, my body was pushed to its limits. There were days when the pain and discomfort were almost unbearable. In those moments, I clung to the memories of the peace and love I had experienced during my journey beyond life. Curiously, my ability to see auras and feel others' emotions intensified during my treatment. I could see the compassion and concern in the auras of the doctors and nurses, the love and fear in Celeste's aura, and the determination and hope in the auras of the other patients. This ability became both a blessing and a challenge. On one hand, it allowed me to deeply connect with those around me, feeling their support and love in a way that went beyond words. On the other hand, it was sometimes overwhelming to feel not only my own pain and fear, but also the intense emotions of everyone around me. During the long days of treatment, I often found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned during my near-death experience. The understanding of the interconnectedness of all things helped me view my struggle with cancer not as an isolated battle, but as part of a larger process of healing and transformation that extended beyond just myself. The realization that life continues beyond physical death gave me a unique perspective on my situation. Not that it eliminated fear or uncertainty, but it provided me with a sense of peace and acceptance that many found surprising in someone facing such a serious illness. My friend Jonathan, who knew my story, was a constant source of support and understanding. He visited me regularly, bringing not only physical comfort but also an openness to discussing the spiritual dimensions of my journey that I couldn't share with many others. As the months of treatment passed, I began to see my battle with cancer as an opportunity for spiritual growth. Each day brought new challenges, new lessons about patience, acceptance, and the importance of living in the present moment. Of course, there were moments of deep darkness, days when the pain was unbearable, when fear threatened to overwhelm me. But even in those moments, I remembered the light I had experienced, the unconditional love I had felt. These memories were like an anchor, keeping me steady even in the most violent storms. After 6 months of intensive treatment, I finally received the news I had been hoping for. The cancer had gone into remission. The joy and relief I felt in that moment were indescribable. Once again, just like on the night of the storm so many years ago, I had faced death and survived. The recovery process was slow and sometimes frustrating. My body, which had already been pushed to its limits once, now faced a new set of challenges. But with each step, with each small victory, I felt a deep gratitude for life and for all the experiences it offered. This second trial reinforced many of the lessons I had learned during my near-death experience. The importance of love, compassion, and connection with others, the understanding that every challenge, no matter how difficult, carries within it the seed of profound transformation. More than ever, I felt compelled to share my story, to offer hope and comfort to those facing their own struggles. But I still hesitated. How could I put into words such deep and transformative experiences? Little did I know that the universe was already preparing the way for me to fulfill this greater purpose. The seeds planted during my journey beyond life and nurtured through my battle with cancer were about to bloom in ways I could never have imagined. After my recovery from cancer, I felt an increasing urgency to share my story. The experiences I had lived, both my journey beyond life and my fight against cancer, seemed too heavy to keep to myself. However, the fear of judgment and disbelief still held me back. It was during a follow-up appointment with my oncologist that the first step in this direction was taken. Dr. Simmons, who had accompanied me throughout my treatment, commented on my extraordinarily positive attitude toward the illness. At that moment, I felt an inexplicable urge to open my heart. With initial hesitation, I began to tell Dr. Simmons about my near-death experience. I spoke about the light, the spiritual beings, the visions of the future. To my surprise, and instead of skepticism, I found an attentive and compassionate listener. Dr. Simmons revealed to me that other patients had shared similar experiences with him over the years. Encouraged by this positive reception, I decided to take the next step. With the support of Celeste and Jonathan, I began to seek out support groups for people who had near-death experiences. That's how I discovered the International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDs. Attending IANDS meetings was a revelation. For the first time, I found myself surrounded by people who deeply understood what I had experienced. Hearing their stories, sharing mine, was incredibly liberating. I was no longer alone with my extraordinary experiences. As I became more active in the NDE, near-death experience community, I began to realize the positive impact my story could have. People who were struggling to make sense of their own experiences found comfort and validation in my account. Those facing serious illnesses or the loss of loved ones found hope in my description of life beyond death. In time, I gained the confidence to share my story more broadly. I began giving talks in hospitals, cancer patient support groups, and even in some more open-minded churches. Each time I told my story, I felt that I was fulfilling a greater purpose. However, sharing wasn't always easy. I faced skepticism, and sometimes even hostility, from people who couldn't accept the reality of my experiences. Some coworkers began to look at me differently when they learned about my story. There were moments when I doubted whether I had done the right thing by opening up. But for every person who doubted, there were many others who found comfort and inspiration in my words. I received countless letters and emails from people whose lives had been touched by my story. Some said they had lost their fear of death. Others said they had found a new purpose in life. One of the most rewarding experiences was when I was invited to speak at a palliative care conference. Sharing my story with healthcare professionals who deal with death and dying every day was deeply moving. Many told me that my account helped them see their work in a new light, reaffirming the importance of compassionate care at the end of life. Throughout this process of sharing, I discovered that my ability to see auras and feel others' emotions was a valuable tool. I could sense when someone in the audience was particularly moved or disturbed by my words, allowing me to adjust my approach accordingly. As the years passed, my story began to reach a wider audience. I was invited to appear on radio shows and even for a few interviews on local television. Although the exposure was sometimes uncomfortable, I felt it was important to continue sharing, offering a perspective of hope and meaning in a world often dominated by fear and materialism. Eventually, with the encouragement of many people whose lives had been touched by my story, I decided to write a book. The process of putting my experiences on paper was both challenging and deeply therapeutic. Reliving each moment, trying to capture in words sensations and perceptions that seemed beyond human language, was a journey in itself. When the book was finally published, the response was overwhelming. I received messages from people all over the world, sharing how my story had impacted their lives. Some said the book had helped them cope with grief. Others reported that they had found the courage to pursue their dreams and live a fuller life. Looking back, I realized that sharing my journey had become an essential part of my own healing and growth process. Every time I told my story, every time I answered a question or offered comfort to someone in need, I felt that I was honoring the gift I had received on that stormy night so many years ago. My journey of sharing taught me that our deepest and most transformative experiences are not just for ourselves. They are gifts we must share with the world, seeds of hope and transformation that can bloom in the lives of countless others. Today, looking back on my journey, I feel a profound sense of gratitude for every moment, every challenge, every revelation. The near-death experience I had on that stormy night in 1983 wasn't just an isolated event, but the beginning of a transformation that continues to shape my life every day. To live fully, for me, means embracing every moment with expanded awareness, a deep appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things. The physical limitations that cancer left as a reminder are not a burden, but a constant reminder of the preciousness of life. My ability to see auras and feel others' emotions has become an integral part of who I am. It no longer overwhelms me, but serves as a tool that allows me to navigate the world with more compassion and understanding. I see the beauty in people's struggles, the courage in their vulnerabilities. Every day is an opportunity to apply the lessons I learned during my journey beyond life. The understanding that we are all part of something greater leads me to treat every interaction, every encounter, as sacred. Whether talking to a coworker, helping a stranger on the street, or simply appreciating nature, I strive to bring full awareness to every moment. My work as an engineer has taken on a new dimension. I see the interconnectedness of the systems I work with in a deeper way, understanding how each part affects the whole. This has allowed me to innovate in ways that even surprised me. My relationship with Celeste has blossomed in ways I could never have imagined. Our connection goes beyond the physical and emotional, touching something truly spiritual. Together, we explore the mysteries of life, supporting each other in our continued growth. My friendship with Jonathan has deepened over the years. Our conversations often turn to existential and spiritual matters. His curiosity and openness constantly challenge me to explore new perspectives on my experiences. I continue to share my story, but now with a deeper understanding of its impact. It's not just about recounting extraordinary events, but about offering hope, inspiration, and a new perspective on life and death. Every talk, every workshop, every individual conversation is an opportunity to plant the seeds of transformation. My journey has taught me that life is much more than our physical existence. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and every moment is an opportunity for growth and learning. Death is not something to be feared, but a transition to another phase of our eternal existence. At the same time, I've learned to deeply value this earthly life. Every breath, every heartbeat is a miracle. Pain and suffering are not punishments, but opportunities for growth. Joy and love are glimpses of the divine reality that awaits us. I look to the future not with fear or anxiety, but with serene curiosity. I know that, regardless of what comes, I will be prepared. The vision of my future that I received during my near-death experience was not a fixed destiny, but a reminder of the potential that exists in every moment. To live fully, for me, means embracing the totality of the human experience, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and challenges. It means recognizing the divinity in every person I meet, the sacredness in every moment I live. As I grow older, I feel an increasing peace. I do not fear death, for I know it is simply a doorway to another phase of our eternal journey. At the same time, I embrace each day of this life with gratitude and wonder. My near-death experience showed me that our spiritual journey is continuous, that love is the most powerful force in the universe, and that each of us has a unique and valuable purpose. Living according to these truths is my daily commitment. As I share these final words, I feel deep gratitude for all those who have been part of my journey, those who supported me, those who challenged me, and those whose lives have been touched by my story. Each of you is part of the greater tapestry that is life. And to you who are reading these words now, my hope is that my story may in some way illuminate your own path. Remember, you are more than your physical body, more than your current circumstances. You are an eternal soul, unconditionally loved, with a unique purpose in this vast universe. Live fully, love deeply, and never lose sight of the wonder that is being alive in this moment, in this place. The journey continues, always. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to catch every new video and help us spread this message to as many people as possible. Until next time.